I'm looking forward to what you all are doing.
I'm super excited to be a part of what you guys are doing.
The mold that you all are building is a powerful thing.
I've been watching how you guys have been collaborating, and I just want to applaud you. I'm watching you guys. I'm learning from you. I'm admiring you. So thank you for having me on.
Each other, man. The Academy Podcast definitely is in support of Recharge Pod, or whatever y'all gonna call this thing, man. Whatever it is.
Hey, this is Seth Yolorda.
Yo, what's going on? This is Pastor Noah Washington.
This is Pastor Puck Fordham.
This is Pastor Tina Kerger.
I'm Pastor Sean Moss.
This is Pastor JD.
This is Pastor Kimberly Mann.
What's up, everybody? Pierre Quinn here.
What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Kyle Crawford, and you are plugged in to the Recharge.
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 Recharge. Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge. Recharge.
Recharge
Podcast.
Well, listen, man, we are so excited to have Pastor Pierre Quinn with us on today. Again, our podcast, and we just want to welcome our guest, our special guest, and our brother, Pierre Quinn, to our Recharge podcast. We're excited to have you, bro. We thank you for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, you guys are doing some amazing things in ministry. I love the collaboration. I love like the honesty and transparency of what you're doing, and in the middle of everything that's going on. Let's be honest, Kyle, Shaq. Let's be honest, man. Y'all put a lot of people to shame. Like y'all putting some people to shame. You got some colleagues out there that need to step it up a little bit, because if you guys can do what you're doing in these circumstances, then there might not be as many excuses for other people as we've been making. But I mean, some people still don't know what to do. So,
wow, man, appreciate that. Praise God, man.
Yeah, we receive it. How did you get into ministry?
I mean, man, I think it's the classic story that so many of us have. You know, you're the little kid in church, and you know you happen to speak well, and the old ladies in church say you're gonna preach for Youth Day, and then you preach for Youth Day at like 9 years old, and from that moment on, you're going to be a pastor. Doesn't matter what you thought, doesn't matter what you imagined, doesn't even matter what God wants you to do. You're gonna be a pastor.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, you know, that impetus, that seed was planted so many years ago in terms of pastoral ministry. But I'm what we call, and I think maybe in our denominational construct, we might be the only people who refer to it this way. I was what you would call a second career pastor, which means that I worked in another discipline, in another career, and then I came to pastoral ministry. And part of it was after I finished undergrad, I kind of felt this maybe sort of urge impression to go into seminary studies, but I didn't. I went to grad school, did a graduate degree in communication, and went on to work as a teacher, fundraising and development. And then I was working at a job. I was working for ADRA International. If you don't know what that is, that's the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. It's our non-governmental organization, nonprofit that does relief efforts around the world. I was working there, and it just wasn't it. It just wasn't it. And I felt strongly God was saying, I need you to finish this seminary thing. So, 2009, I enrolled in the seminary in 2012, graduated from seminary when we packed on up and we moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky. So that's the Cliff Notes version of how the story started for me.
Yeah. Man, so what was the first, what was your first, I don't know what I'm doing moment?
It happened early. So it's installation day, and it was kind of cool. I was looking in my timeline on Facebook because my ministry anniversary is actually on the day that we're recording this podcast.
Oh wow!
It came up in my timeline, that bulletin from my installation Sabbath in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Wow!
And I remember that day. It was an interesting day because I show up at the church, and the members, people weren't on the internet like that. 7 years ago or so. And the members thought that my dad was the pastor. So
wow.
So that was a little unique. But we get through that first service, and then in the afternoon we have like a Q&A, ask the pastor, sort of the traditional format. We have a lunch and we do all of that stuff. And I remember getting to the end of the Q&A, the person who introduced me was Ben Jones, who is the current president of South Central Conference. He introduced me, and he facilitated the Q&A in the afternoon. We did a prayer over our marriage. My wife and I, we have 2 daughters. And I remember that program being over, and me asking Elder Jones, so what do I do now? And and Elder Jones said, "You're the pastor. You tell me."
Wow.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding. Like you thrust in 3 years in the seminary, ready, and I'm just like, I have no idea. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Bro, that speaks to Elder Jones. He has a way of helping you grow by throwing you in the deep end, and it was the same thing that he did with me in my installation when we came down to South. So I said, okay, so what's next? He goes, you tell me, son. You've been given the task. Now you go and lead. And I was just there like, all right, bet. All right, bet. God, what are we gonna do? Because at this moment, we don't know. But I think you make a relevant point, even with your part of your story, is that this is your second career, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can as young ministers we reconcile? Because most of us ministers, some of us we served in the military and then are coming to this where we have a job description that's laid out what your goals are. Pastoral ministry, unless your administration is really like that, it's kind of different, right? So how do you go from your first career to your second career, and then your second career telling you, okay, you do what you do?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to really embrace, even if we have this idea of one of the analogies that we throw out often is kind of the Jonah experience. You knew you were called and you ran away from it and all of that stuff. That's not the case for a lot of people. It just wasn't on their radar, or that wasn't the season for them in which God, steered them in this direction. But it's helpful to know that God does not waste any of our experiences. And quite often, it's the very things that you learned in the military, the things that you learned as a banker, the things that you learned as a professor, that God wants you to use in this new context. So, and a lot of those environments were highly organized, highly structured in terms of timelines and workflows. And you get into the pastorate and you're realizing, man, this is not quite that. In many cases, we're supposed to bring those skills and those paradigms. Because being a pastor is like, hey, if you don't talk about it, if you don't mention it, you can put everything off until next year. You can really fly by without a structure or without a focus and still be noted as somewhat effective. And so it's a question of whatever that experience was, how do I bring that experience to bear on what I'm doing now? And how do I leverage it? How do I leverage it? Even in the midst of the frustrations, how do I leverage the experiences that God allowed me to have for this context and to help myself and to help my people grow?
Sure. So, Pierre, if you don't mind, what was your first career?
Yeah. So my undergrad degree, my graduate degree is in communication.
Okay.
In graduate school, I started teaching communication courses, introduction to public speaking, interpersonal communication, and then I taught business communication. So that was really the start of my professional career. And then about a year later, I started in fundraising and development. So I'm adjunct faculty as a communication professor, and I'm also working in fundraising and development. And that was what I left to start seminary and to go into full-time pastoral ministry.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so I don't know if you said, is your dad a pastor as well?
No, nobody in my family. Like I think he walked in the church that day before I did and sat down. So people assumed, I came in after him, I sat behind him, and there was no sort of introduction that we're used to in some of our churches. We're used to in some of our churches it was a small church. I mean, on my installation day, there was 25 people in the room, and 6 of those people I was related to. So, it wasn't that, how we do today, you figure out who the pastor is going to be. You go on social media, you do your investigations, you're looking at sermons, it wasn't that when I started in 2012 in Bowling Green. So people assumed, hey, is this? I don't know. No. But my dad was like, nah, it's my son. He's sitting behind me.
Wow. So you just shared your story of your first I don't know what I'm doing moment when President Ben Jones you asked him the question, what next? And he's like, well, that's for you to figure out. So can you just tell us from that moment how you actually went forward in trying to figure out what ministry is in your context?
Yeah. So for 3 weeks, and man, I walk in the freedom of being able to say this so many years later. For 3 weeks, I went to prayer meeting and went to church. And sat on my couch asking myself, what do I do now?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
That's
know what
real.
to do.
That's
So I'm gonna
real,
go to
bro.
prayer meeting. I'm gonna go to
That's
church.
real. Yeah, that's real.
And shortly thereafter, I had some really good older brothers and mentors in ministry. And I said, listen, I know I went to seminary. I know, I had this kind of training of sorts. Now, ended up throwing that whole binder that I walked out of seminary with in the trash. So you can edit that out if you want to. You don't have
We're
to.
gonna keep that
But
thing. Keep that thing.
throw the whole binder in the trash.
Yeah.
And I sat down with my mentors. I had a good friend, Dr. David Defoe, who was pastoring in Maryland. A good friend, Pastor David Steed, who was a mentor for me when I was in undergrad. And then my mentor, my big brother in ministry, Pastor Andre Anderson, out of Toronto, Canada. And I just said, listen, I don't know what to do. Like, seriously, I don't know what to do. So can you help me draw up a blueprint of what ministry looks like for me in this context? And the beauty and the sense of humor of God is that each of these three had a different emphasis on what was important in ministry. So I learned how to take the perspective of each and really put my own spin on it. So a couple of weeks after that initial, like, I don't know what I'm doing, members started to think, oh, you might know something about pastoral ministry a little bit, even though, you're 30 and we just dropped you into this thing. You might know a little something. You're going to do all right. What they didn't know is that every single day I was on the phone with one of those guys saying, hey, this situation came up. What do I do? And they would never answer the question for me. They would always give me a scenario of what they did or give me options. They would never make the decision for me.
Wow.
But being vulnerable enough to say to other people that I don't know what I'm doing, being okay with, some jokes or some ribbing that came from that, but also being humble enough to say, okay, all this meat they're giving me, what are the bones that I need to throw out? Because that doesn't work for me.
Right.
And how can I apply and then evaluate? Because that misnomer, we can call the greats of pastoral ministry in our context. We assume, Henry Wright was always 55. We assume James Doggett was always 50, whatever. We assume, we assume Buddy Bird was always 40 plus years old. Yeah. These greats are giants in ministry. We assume Walter Pearson was always an amazing, gifted storytelling preacher.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of shy away from it or ignore the fact, and that's what notoriety does for you, that they too were people starting out, in many cases, preaching trash sermons that they stole from their favorite preachers.
Yeah.
So walking into kind of fighting off some of the veneer and the expectation that you have to be great and starting out, because I didn't have a pastor in the family to lean on like that. I did an undergraduate degree in communication. I come to this thing, quote unquote, late. I didn't even go to school in a culture of pastoral ministry. So I was really trying to be too hard on myself and realize I'm like, I remember one, I won't tell you who of those three said it, but somebody said to me one day, he said, Pierre, half the people who have been in the ministry, 10, 20 years, still don't know what they're doing. So you're in good company. You're in good company.
That's good.
What we're trying to present before you is that everyone struggles from the gates in ministry. Not only struggles from the gates, keep on struggling through ministry. And it's literally seeing God's hand carry you through each difficult situation, even in your failures. And we use this phrase, the last podcast, is falling forward. Mm-hmm. And in ministry, you have to learn how to fall forward. And so I think you made a great point, Pierre, because you were, again, your undergrad wasn't in theology. You didn't have those resources at your fingertips. What they taught you at Andrews was just an emphasis of a holistic picture, not practical tools of how to pastor people. So it's good that you threw that out the window. But you did something that I think is very critical for preachers who are coming into ministry and preachers who's been in ministry that feel isolated at times, that try to figure it out on themselves. And that's the whole idea of reaching out. Why is it important for us young ministers to say, hey, I don't have it all together. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to humble myself first and then reach out. Why do you think that's important?
Man, yeah. I mean, let's go preacher on it. Let's go Proverbs, man. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And it's, hey, maybe some people who are listening to this podcast, you've stumbled on it, and maybe you're not necessarily like churchy or pastor, like you don't even know how you got to here. I mean, you're a Chinese proverb. If you want to know what the road is like, go up ahead, ask someone coming back. So
Wow.
you can get it however you need it in this podcast episode today. I think we make the mistake of thinking that the people who are incredibly successful have gotten there simply because of their own ingenuity and giftedness. The truth is we've all gotten to where we are because somebody has helped us out. And the quicker you realize that the world is built on, and it's a biblical principle, the world is built on relationships. The world is built on relationships. And if you can get into a place where you're willing to have authentic connections and relationships with people, it's going to take you a lot further, a lot faster. So for us, and I enjoyed my seminary experience. So let me just clarify in that regard. I enjoyed it, but I was coming as a second career pastor. I was married. I had 2 kids. I had nothing to prove to anybody. I was working as a teacher at the same time. So I said, I'm going to use seminary I know the people that I'm in school with eventually will be conference presidents.
That's right.
They'll eventually be youth directors. They'll eventually be in a space where they may need someone that has my particular skill sets. And I want to be able to connect and to reach out. They may have access to resources and perspectives that I don't have. So let me I'm going to get my grades. I'm here to pass. I'm not here to get A's. Sorry, I'm here to pass. I already got a graduate degree. I had a 3.9 in my other graduate degree. I'm here to pass. Wow. And I'm here to get my credentials so I can go pastor. But I realize that I need people. Yeah. I need people. And ministry, listen, y'all, a lot of us are struggling in our spaces. We are struggling sometimes with vices. And it comes down to the fact that we are lonely because we allow the hierarchy or the culture or whatever to keep us from having authentic relationships with people that I can call and be like, Shaq, this was not a good week. The sermon was trash. Me and my wife got into an argument, and I wanted to say some unkind words to one of my elders, and Shaq be like, not look at me crazy.
Right.
And if we don't have that, and for every stage in your life, you only get, listen, y'all, God's favor and grace often comes through recommendations from other people.
Wow.
You know what's crazy? Like you saying that literally ties into what JD was just saying. He was talking about, the fact that everything that he's learned, everything that we learn comes from recommendations of other people, like books. You know what I'm saying? What are you thinking about? It comes from the recommendation of other people. So to hear you say that, I think it just connects both of these episodes. And I think what you're saying, bro, is super important. I had to learn that here. Because, just take us back to Bowling Green and Owensboro. Like, you were the person that gave me consistent burn as a student to come preach for you, man. You, JD, and some other folk. But I was preaching for you once a month, bro. It was like clockwork, man. But I remember one of the things that you said to me then. You said you need to find a mentor. You have a mentor that's ahead of you, way ahead of you. But you also need to find a mentor that's right in front of you, somewhere around there. To kind of help you, because that's long term, but you need somebody that's right in front of you to kind of help you into what you're getting ready to get into. And one of the things that I struggled with here when I first got here was I went through that same scenario that you said, where you just sat on the couch every day, didn't know what you were doing, and you went to church and you went to prayer meeting. Only mine lasted for 7 months. You know what I'm saying? So it was I was here. But I was severe, coming out of it, I realized I was severely depressed. I was lonely. I had all these questions, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like, okay, well, I probably should have learned this at my last assignment. So I'm not really it was a bunch of my head stuff. And now coming out of it, I realized there's some other stuff that I actually needed to resolve as far as father issues and all those things. But in those moments, man, I literally needed, what got me out of it was people, you know what I'm saying? Talking and saying, hey, I don't know if this is going to sound weird, but this is something that kind of happened. And then I realized it was actually very common. You know what I'm saying? I said it in a space of people that I thought would probably, they're older and more, successful in ministry. And I said it and everybody was like, yeah. And that was I was like, wait, what? Wait, hold on, what? You know what I'm saying? And everybody was like, yeah, no. Yeah, you should have said something earlier. You know what I'm saying? We would have. And I think, bro, what you're saying is powerful. This whole thing works around relationships.
Yeah.
not just in church, but like for your personal development, you have to have relationships, man.
Now, let me tell you like 2 stories real quick. Real quick. Let's talk about the preaching thing. And you were coming and hanging out in Bowling Green, driving from Huntsville, right?
Yeah.
How far of a drive was that?
It was like
3?
I can make it in. Yeah, 3.5. I'll make it in 3.5.
3.5. And I was like begging the church, like, come on, y'all. He's driving. Can we give him
Hey, now look, being on the other side, I understand, bro.
That's right.
So the reason why that was a big deal for me, because when I was in seminary, Pastor Jason North,
Yeah.
He had a 3-church district in Illinois, Decatur, Illinois, Pontiac, Illinois, and another church, and I can't remember the name of it. But he called me when he heard I was coming to seminary. He was like, "Quinn, listen, I need some help. I got 3 churches. Can you come preach at one?" And I was literally driving once a month, and he didn't have no budget. Wow. I was literally driving once a month, sometimes twice a month, to one of his churches. Wow. So I got potluck stories and all of that other good stuff. Yeah. But I was driving, and sometimes I would be frustrated because I'm a student. I'm driving. The honorarium isn't like amazing and all of that stuff. Here's the crazy thing. When I walked into my church in Bowling Green, you know what I said? I've been here before. Not that I've been to Bowling Green before, but I've been here before. I did that for him for a year. The year of that experience, driving that long distance to that church, and sometimes even being 10, 12 people in there, 4 of them are asleep and 2 of them are kids. And preaching my heart out to a room of 4 adults that are awake, and then somebody's phone goes off, so they go, and there's 3 of us in here. Prepared me for when I got my own district, and there were 4 people at prayer meeting, and I just drove an hour and a half to be there, or driving all day. One of my churches was 2.5 hours away from my house. Well, when I was going for Pastor North, I think the church was 4 hours away. So I would get up I would leave my house at 6 o'clock in the morning to drive there, to be there all day and to come back. So when I was like, listen, when I get my church, I'm calling everybody I know that would benefit from this experience. And somebody gave me your name, and I was like, well, let me call them. Huntsville ain't too far. Come on up to Bowling Green. Yeah. And I can tell you now this on the podcast because Shaq is over here, so I feel like I have somebody I can side with. Man, I was a little upset when I felt like Kyle Crawford was taking off because I was like, Kyle, where you at, man? Oh man, I'm in Chattanooga this week.
Yeah,
Kyle, where you at, man? I'm in Nashville this week.
Yeah.
Kyle, where you at, man? Oh man, I'm in Florida this week. Where you at, bro?
Yo, but what's crazy, bro? It's crazy. Like, so there was actually, so that did happen. That did happen. But let's just put an asterisk there. That happened after I got hired.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that happened after I got hired. One of the things that I definitely tried to do, like I try to be like a real loyal person.
Yeah.
Like there was times where like you had invited me up and other people might have invited me, but I was like, nah, like this is because I felt like one of the things I felt like, bro, like you didn't have to ask me to come. 1, 2, you didn't have to keep asking me to come. You know what I'm saying? And that to me was like, that was dope, bro, because like the only other people that had me come consistently was like people that I knew. So like JD would have me come like once a month. You know what I'm saying? Or like people that I knew that were now in ministry. So for like, a guy that, and I didn't know that you had just gotten out and you just got out there a couple of years, whatever. I thought like, yo, this is an established dude, and he's asking me to come. So it's like, bro, like that's amazing. That was like a huge opportunity. So yeah. I appreciate everybody who helped me. Yeah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because for me, that showed me, I remember the first time I tried to preach without notes was at your church, bro. And it didn't go well. Like, to me, it didn't go well. So the whole time I went home, I said, well, no notes is not, extemporaneous preaching is not my forte. You know what I'm saying? Like, but there's so many things I learned from just like being there, being able to work that thing out. Like comedians, they'll go to, some little small room and they'll work out their jokes. Like that to me was like the thing. It was like, okay, I'm going to preach this. I leave like, oh yeah, I'm never gonna preach that again. But it helped me. You know what I'm saying? Like that joint helped me, man. That joint helped me so
Well,
much.
and it comes out of, and I think it comes out of the question. Like, I don't know what to do. I have 3 churches.
Yeah.
Now this is 7 years ago. Okay. So the concept and we're in the South too. So it ain't like it is in the North. The paradigm is different.
Yeah.
So, if I had to do it all over again, I'm sorry, they would have been mad because they would have been satellite churches. We would have had the same feed going through all the churches. I would have established like campus leaders. My first elder would have been a campus leader. We would all been all together. But back then I was like, bro, I was recording sermons before that thing became popular.
Wow.
I was recording sermons and playing them in church.
Wow.
Before, like, I would go set up my little phone and like record a sermon, and they would play it on Sabbath morning because it was a context. In some spaces they were like, don't let the elder preach no more, please. If you got to record it, so please don't.
Yeah.
So, but that was a connection because I got your name from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about for us when we were first getting out there. Remember, like, it was because Pastor Jason North did that for me. It made me inclined, not just that I needed help, but I want to be able in some way to provide this experience for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that it can only come from trusting people, though. I had to trust that I would leave this church and you would come and it would be okay. Now, the other quick story about relationships, going back to something you were saying earlier, Kyle, about letting people know earlier. You said it in a safe place with some older people and they were like, you could have said this earlier. So Shaq, this is a story, and I know y'all ain't never had this issue, right? So it was a couple of weeks into pastoring in Bowling Green. It was a beautiful setup because my first elder in Bowling Green and his wife were just a couple of years older than my wife and I. So, my first, just a couple, you remember, we eat at the house, right?
Yeah.
Man, good times, man. Good food, good times.
Yeah.
But I remember preaching at church one Sabbath and then having an argument with my wife. And then we were supposed to go over their house for Sabbath lunch. And I was like, I ain't going. So my wife was like, all right, then I'm going. So, I mean, this is like 3-4 weeks into the gig, right? I'm just the pastor of the church. And she's over there all day and they're calling me and, sending me text messages, Pastor, are you going to come hang out with her? And I'm just like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to be around nobody. We had this argument. So the next, my wife comes home that evening. She was like, stop being trash. Like you need to, tomorrow we're going over their house and you're going to apologize. You should have been there. I know we got into an argument, but whatever, how wives are. So I went over there and I said, want to apologize. I know you had invited me over. And I was like, kind of embarrassed to say that, we got into an argument. I just didn't feel like being around people. And they both busted out laughing. And I was like, I felt, some type of way. Like, why are you laughing? And she and my first elder's wife was like, should I tell them? Should I tell them? And he's like, go ahead and tell them. She said, well, on Friday night, me and your first elder got into an argument. And I hopped into a car and I was just driving around the city because I didn't want to be around him. He got on my nerves so much. Just couldn't stand it. He was getting on my nerves so much. I just drove around for 2 hours in the city. And we laughed for the next 6 months. We laughed off of those stories.
Wow.
And how the humanity that sometimes we feel like as pastors we have to hide because of everything that's surrounding the job.
Yeah.
I wanted to highlight that because for our sisters in ministries, for our brothers in ministries, there's this standard that people have set before us that we come into ministry trying to emulate in a sense, this whole perfect household. But I think you bring a great point as far as, we're talking about relationships and I don't know what I'm doing, but I think the key to this whole podcast so far has been contingent upon relationships and how when you're able to be in a space, not even in a space, when you're able to be yourself and be honest with yourself to other people, there's a connection that is made. And I'm pretty sure if you would just share how that transcended in your discipleship of your first elder and how he actually not viewed you, but how he respected you because you were so honest on the front end.
Yeah. So my first elder was doing, at the time, he was doing his PhD in social work and public policy. So he's all about like relationships and emotions and honesty. And it was a situation where after that experience and after that story, we grew into a friendship and we were like colleagues. And it would be some times where because of that, I felt comfortable saying, I really need you to do this, or no, this is a situation that I don't feel comfortable with, or how we handled it. And he would say, okay, Pastor, I really need, like, this is kind of the way I'm seeing it. I don't agree. But because of that humanity and that shared, kind of shared perspective of struggle of what it means to be the head of your household and to have a wife and kids and responsibilities that we were willing to share with each other, it allowed us, in the context of, even because there were moments where we had to have, it was one of those things where when we were at each other's houses, we weren't pastor and first elder.
Awesome.
We were like, we're cool. When we are at church, this is pastor, this is first elder, and we're not always going to agree. And there's some times where my perspective needs to be shifted a little bit, and he has to come a lot and provide the counsel that you would hope good first elders do. And there were times where I would have to challenge him and push him and stretch him to do more, even though I'm a couple of years younger than him. But because I trusted him with part of my humanity, that integrated discipleship and we know that's the key to discipleship. It's the humanity, the be with factor that Jesus exhibits. I mean, Jesus, man, he had this way of, even if he did not co-sign on your lifestyle, he had a way of being present with you, to let you know that he appreciated and validated you as a human being. The best way I can put it, Jesus had a way of making you feel like you belonged. And once you felt like you belonged, Jesus maneuvered it to not pick at, but to put a spotlight on what you believed.
Dude, that's perfect, because I mean, even going with that whole logic with Jesus sitting with the tax collectors after he calls Matthew in Matthew chapter 9, I think it's important for young ministers to know that there's your humanity is your ministry, if that makes sense, right? And we cannot be afraid of sharing our struggles. So one of the things that I'm very honest and open about is that I'm a mess and I'm a work in progress. Now, the details of what kind of mess I am, I will keep to myself. I will keep to myself, you know? But the reality is, when you're able to share some struggles with your members, it actually breaks down barriers so that you're able to lead them, because they're not looking at you as someone who's high and they're low. It's someone who's on the same level. We're on an equal platform, but God has a specific calling for me to lead you in this time, in this season, then you have to lead, if that makes sense. And so, like, for those who are listening to this podcast, just know that your humanity has a lot to do with the success of your ministries. And I think we've all learned that at the very beginning of our I don't know what I'm doing moments, is that when you're transparent in not only, I'm not saying lay out everything before them.
Please don't.
Because they will weaponize that, and that's for a whole different podcast.
A whole different podcast.
But Pierre, we appreciate you just sharing with us just the value of relationships. And the key that I think that we pull out of this whole podcast is that you were in a space where you said, I don't know what I'm doing. You used who God put in your life, relationships again, and you connected and said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me with this? And that's a sign of humility. And God always, when you read the Bible, he always honors those who are humble enough to ask for help, right? Mm-hmm. And so, man, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, man, this has been refreshing. It's been edifying.
Listen, you don't know what you're doing. We don't know what we're doing, but there are always people that are around us that do know what they're doing. Yeah. And we can always just ask them. Like, God hasn't sent you to whatever district you're in, whatever church you're in, alone. There's an Aaron somewhere. You know what I'm saying? There's an Aaron somewhere. There's a Joshua somewhere. There's somebody that is willing to hold up your arms. There's somebody willing to, speak for you in some situations and give you encouragement. And so I just think that that's the thing. When you feel like you're alone, wherever you are, there are people that God has placed around you that can give you wisdom, give you insight, and can just listen, right? Yeah. I mean, just listening sometimes allows us to work our own stuff out when we just have somebody that's just going to listen to us. But relationships, it boils down to relationships. You cannot pastor successfully, or just be a successful human being without relationships. So, man, we appreciate you coming through. Real quick,
Thank you, bro.
Let everybody know what you have worked on, what you got out there for young pastors and older, whoever, for pastors, and what you're currently working on.
Yeah. So, man. So life has transitioned wildly for me in some ways, in other ways, not so much. So no longer do I pastor in a formalized congregational context. I tell people all the time, I have not left ministry. I've left congregational ministry.
That's good.
Sometimes as pastors and culture, we take the distinction and say, your ministry is only valid if you're a pastor. You know, all of the teachers and chaplains and other people out there kind of take that's so disrespectful when we say that, when we say that to them. But God made it clear supernaturally several years ago that the next area for me is what I term marketplace ministry. It's being able to disciple, pour into, and support people, many of which have a kind of sense of connection with God, but who might not ever come into our churches. So my primary responsibility is helping both ministry and marketplace leaders become the best at what God has called them to be. So still preach, still do church training and leadership, but much of my work is in the marketplace with companies and organizations, doing leadership development and coaching for them. And 30-second story, I was working with a company, and the president and CEO had to let somebody go that was very important to the company. And I worked with this company for 2 years, and I was doing some leadership development work for him. And I said, not too long ago, you had to let this person go. Can you tell me about it? And he told me the story of it. And he said, I haven't really told anybody else about this. And he said, and I said to him, thank you for telling me. And he said, yeah, but that's your calling. You are in a space to help people. And he said, I don't know if that's just, your pastoral background or what, but you are in a space to help people talk through difficult conversations. Wow. And I'm so glad our company has found you. So yeah, so I take biblical principles and use them in marketplace scenarios. I just take off the chapter and verse. And what really helped me was jotting things down in the beginning, in that phase of I don't know what I'm doing. And that jotting things down actually resulted in my first book, Leading While Green, How Emerging Leaders Can Ripen into Effective Leaders. And you can check that out on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and type in Leading While Green, or check out my website, Pierre C. Quinn. That's Pierre, the letter C, Quinn.com.
Cool, man. Listen, I need everybody right now, if you're listening, if you don't already have that book, please go and grab that thing. I still have a copy that I've gone back to. It made a whole lot more sense to me as my first solo ministry, because there's a lot of things that, you just don't know. There's a learning curve, man. And especially, once you get out of school, you see leaders, but you really don't develop your own style of leadership until you are out there and it's trial and error. You know what I'm saying? And so those resources to help us be effective leaders are always amazing, man. So we appreciate you coming through, bro.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming through. And so this is a wrap for episode 6.
I'm looking forward to what you all are doing.
I'm super excited to be a part of what you guys are doing.
The mold that you all are building is a powerful thing.
I've been watching how you guys have been collaborating, and I just want to applaud you. I'm watching you guys. I'm learning from you. I'm admiring you. So thank you for having me on.
Each other, man. The Academy Podcast definitely is in support of Recharge Pod, or whatever y'all gonna call this thing, man. Whatever it is.
Hey, this is Seth Yolorda.
Yo, what's going on? This is Pastor Noah Washington.
This is Pastor Puck Fordham.
This is Pastor Tina Carriger.
I'm Pastor Sean Moss.
This is Pastor JD.
This is Pastor Kimberly Mann.
What's up, everybody? Pierre Quinn here.
What's up, everybody? This is Pastor Kyle Crawford, and you are plugged in to the Recharge.
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 Recharge. Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Recharge.
Podcast.